No, we'll have a cooker.
All right, good morning, everyone. It is officially 8 o'clock, and we have some live stream joining us, so welcome, live streamers. We want to get started on time so we can get to all the fun this morning. Welcome to our second Manufacturing Matters Breakfast and Burning Issues. I am Leanne Wilson. I'm the Director of Marketing and Business Development for Mantec. This is our second one, as I said, and we're hosted today by L2 Brands. And Dave Farmouth just wanted to say a few words as our host.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. How many people here is first time here? Almost everybody. Okay, good. Next, just to give you guys a tour after the session, the couple matters of business, the bathrooms. Hopefully, you guys found them. There are two sets. One, if you go down those stairs, it's kind of like that way, and the other way, if you go down the front stairs, we came in like men's are that way, women's are that way. It's still confusing. You're about 2 weeks away from having these bathrooms completed up here, unfortunately. But welcome. The other thing was safety. If you do hear the fire alarm, there was no fire drill today, so if you hear the fire alarms, it's real. So just get out. meet at the very front of the building, the way you came in. Yeah, don't expect that to happen, but just in case. So that's it.
All right. Thanks. Well, thank you, Dave. Yeah. Some other just fun things are happening. Our Smart Manufacturing Conference for Mantec is March 19th. You should all have one of these in front of you. Those live streamers, March 19th, mantec.org/SMC 2020. We have some really great speakers. It is in Gettysburg, which is a little bit different for us this year, but we made an awesome agenda for you to make that journey over. We have augmented reality, virtual reality, marketplace, Amazon Marketplace, and the 3D modeling. And then we have keynotes from Caputo Brothers and Wolfgang Confectioners to share their growth stories. So it really is an awesome program. And then everyone has a manufacturer attending that, meaning all of those topics have a manufacturer associated. So we have Hershey Company talking about the 3D modeling, Prenastat with them, WebFX and Pacer pumps for the marketplace, and BAE Systems is going to cover the AR part as well, and Sim Insights for the virtual reality. So we're really excited about all of that. Hopefully you can join us. And this series for the Manufacturing Matters will continue April 23rd in York, and it will be a topic of leadership goals. So stay tuned for that if that's of interest to you. That will be at Penn Air. So with that, I think we'll get started with Jennifer Peterson from Wavelength Marketing. She is a valued Mantec qualified solutions provider, has been working with Mantec for
about 13 years.
Yeah, something like that, 13 years, and currently working on our new website, which we'll be sharing more about that in about a month. So Jennifer, make sure you're in the screen.
Great. Good morning. I'm Jennifer Peterson.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm co-founder of Wavelength Marketing. So we founded our ad agency in 2003 based on the principle of customer-centric marketing, which is really helping marketers tap into the user mindset, the buyers that they're really trying to build relationships with, which is a core topic that we're going to be talking about today. So at some points, I'm going to be tapping off with Gary Peterson. He's the other co-founder, because lead nurturing is really about both the marketing and the sales and the technical part of how we pull all of this together. So he's really good with the technical part of this. So how many people are engaged in lead nurturing right now? Any kind of lead nurturing? Are you using technical software, automated, or old-fashioned way? Kind of in between, a little bit of both.
Old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned, right, which still works for a lot of people. So that's what we're really going to talk about today. Matt's going to click through for me. Okay, so lead nurturing from your perspective as the marketer is really about developing relationships with buyers at all stages of the buying process. And that's from the awareness to consideration, decision-making process. Marketing has become much more complex. You probably all have longer buying cycles than you did maybe 5 or 10 years ago. There's a lot more competition. So developing the relationships takes more time and needs more attention. I'm gonna have to use my beep boop to tell you when to take. So lead nurturing from the buyer's perspective is really the process of the marketer giving them information that's relevant and useful to them at every stage of that buying process. So that's your perspective and their perspective. And the automated part of it is putting a program together that's basically hands-free. So you do the upfront work, you think it through, you map it out, which is really what we're going to go through today. And we're going to use a case study from one of our clients who's using it right now. And then letting it go. Now that doesn't say you're not going to attend to it over time, but it isn't that constant rework and figuring out which direct mailer you're going to send and how you're going to follow up. It's mapping it up front, being really intelligent about it, and then pulling the data off of it at different points so you can see how well you're doing. Okay, so some of the benefits is that it creates highly qualified leads, and that is something I've never worked with a manufacturer who said, all of my leads are fantastic, I'm thrilled. What they really say is, they're just not qualified enough, which is, how many of you are here because your sales team says that? My leads are not qualified enough. The great part about automating your sales process is it really does help qualify the leads for the sales team, because people are choosing to engage with us and interact with us, and they tell us the information that they're responding to. So by the time they get to sales, they can respond intelligently, know what people are looking for. They're much more qualified. Never losing track of a lead. This is another thing that our clients say all the time is, I go to trade shows and then I close the top hot leads, and then what happens to everybody else? They're gone. You have databases and mishmashes all over the place, right? Pretty common with some folks. This lets you put them into a system, segment them, and really you don't lose track of them unless they choose to opt out of your system. And the automated lead nurturing process we're going to talk about today does integrate seamlessly with legacy sales platforms like Salesforce. It generates intelligent touches along the buyer's journey. There's two ways to look at this. One is that the intelligence comes from you understanding who your buyer is and the type of information they're going to respond to as they engage with your company. And the other one is you can actually use variable data in certain automation processes to feed very specific information to people on the fly. That's a little bit more of the complex technical point of it that we can get into later. It provides actionable data that allows you to shift tactics and messages. So if you're using an email program to reach out, you've got different links embedded and you've weighted them differently. Certain responses are more important to you. You can see how people are responding, pull that off and feed that information to your sales team. A great example is with Datum Storage Solutions. They're in York. They're our most robust client for automated lead nurturing. We put different products into their outreach, and we assign different weights to them. So if somebody responds to a certain product, they go into a funnel that triggers the sales team right away that somebody has interest. So that's the type of actionable data. That's just one example that we're talking about. And ultimately, you should have higher ROI off of your marketing efforts. And you're spending all this time and money getting people to express interest in your company. You're probably only nurturing and cultivating and closing the hot leads. Warm and cool don't get enough attention from most of us, but now we can set up a process that does allow us to move people along. If you have an 18-month or 22-month sales cycle, you don't have to worry about how we're going to reach out to those people, and ultimately you can get a higher ROI with increased conversion rates. Any questions so far? Okay, so some stats to convince you. 35 to 50% of sales go to the vendor that responds first. Have any of you found that to be true? We call it speed to the lead, right? Datum's a great example again. They have found that even though they're more expensive, if they are the first people to get to the lead, they have a much better chance of closing. And putting this automated process in place in combination with their business development team has proven that to be the case and increased their conversion rates very significantly in the near recent past. The average sales cycle has increased 22% over the past 5 years. Are we all B2B in here? All manufacturers with any? Have you found your sales cycles to increase, taking longer times, more people involved in the buying process? Typically there's 5 people involved, whether they're overt buyers or they're hidden buyers, decision makers. So you've got to take into account that if it's longer, we have to do have a much longer planned process to keep people moving in their interest. Nurtured leads produce about a 20% increase in sales opportunities. So that, again, that's just through the process of getting people to staying in front of them. And we do see higher sales quota achievement because we're feeding better leads to the sales team. Those are the outside stats. But here's the things that your company probably says and feels, which is we're wasting too much time on low quality leads that just aren't closing, right? We lose leads due to lack of attention. We have peaks and valleys in our sales and production cycles that we really need to figure out. Obviously, there's other ways to do that. There's market research, there's diversification, but moving people through and keeping in front of them can help with that as well. And we need more sales, but our team is maxed out and they're already spending their time focused on key accounts and closing hot leads. You're basically leaving money on the table, right? So you already know that lead nurturing might have something to offer you because that's why you're here today. So we're going to talk about, before we get started, we do want to share one important point, which is that leads are people. And it is so easy as marketers to think of leads as basically things to be sold to. Matt, you want to switch over, please? Things to be sold to. You're just pushing product. It gets very easy to get in that mode and not think about leads in terms of people being business people with functions and roles that have needs and wants. And on top of that, basically everybody you're marketing to or selling to are bombarded with marketing messages and sales messages all the time. And you are not at all the first thing on their mind or the most important thing on their minds. So we have to keep that in mind because one of the things we're going to talk about today is the importance of understanding who we're marketing to and then giving them what they need to do their jobs better. That's absolutely critical, really, to any marketing program working, but especially to a lead nurturing program working. Okay, so we want you can only really get people to respond to this type of program by providing very useful information. We're going to give some examples as we go through. Things we'll talk about today, the core elements of a successful program. We wanted to make sure we kind of gave you an overview from start to finish. First is commitment, goals, profiling, the importance of content, a user-friendly website, nurturing plans, customizable features for sales team, because you really need to make this work. You have to integrate with sales and give them things that make their jobs much easier. And then measuring results. We'll also talk about upsell and cross-sell of our current clients, because usually we have some potential margin increases and potential for sales with people who already do business with us, but we don't know how or have the time to cultivate that extra work. And then we actually have an online assessment that you can take later to see if this is something that would really benefit your organization. Okay, I am sick and tired of prospects making contact with us and only hearing from us one time and never again. President of Datum Storage Solutions. I mean, this is what kicked off the entire program. This frustration of just spending all the time and money to get people to interact with his company. Sales following up with what they really felt like following up with, to be perfectly honest, what they deemed to be qualified, and then they're out. So it was this sentiment that kicked off their lead gen program. They have a nice, robust sales and marketing program. So when we kicked off December 1st, the company had no idea whatsoever how many leads they were even getting a month. By January 1st, we knew that we were getting 77 leads coming through phone calls and emails and form fills. The following month, we were up to 101, so about a 35% increase. They have now been able to identify what their opportunity to conversion rate is. It's very low, but we finally have a baseline. So you can see the type of intelligence and improvement it put in just from them being willing. And it really happened because there was a commitment to change. It was a management decision. He said, I just don't want to leave money on the table anymore. So He created an internal structure, which is their BDT, that's their business development team. That's a team that is specifically supposed to go after all of the leads that come in and vet them. That may not be practical for everybody's organization, but the point is, if you're gonna make the decision, you have to know ahead of time how you're gonna manage and follow up so that you can, again, not waste the investment that you're putting in. So he uses a combination of the BDT and sales reps. That's his traditional model, who then feed the leads to the dealers. So he has two models going now. And it's really given him great speed to the lead, as we mentioned earlier. He communicated the decision and the commitment to sales and marketing. He developed a 12-month plan. How are we going to do this? How are we going to segment the markets? His program is very, very segmented. Law enforcement, correctional facilities, healthcare, education. So we've segmented very deeply. KPIs, key performance indicators. So we know how we're performing at the end of every month and what we need to tweak and what we need to change. And then we have regular accountability and status meetings, both us with the leadership team and also with the BDT and the sales team. How are we doing? We keep that communication going because it's absolutely essential. Any questions so far? I have to remember to smile. I get so intense. Yes.
So you said they went from 7 leads a month to 101.
Mm-hmm.
Over what time period was that?
30 days.
30 days.
30
Wow.
days, yes. Yep.
Our goal is 150.
The goal is 150 by June. And we think that we will probably get there actually by the beginning of May, if we're tracking properly.
And when you say leads, these are like brand new people that have never done business with them, or this could be existing customers that just have a new opportunity they want to buy?
No, we do not count the existing customers. Yeah, we count brand new people, and we do actually count their dormant clients, which we'll talk about in a minute. That's another initiative that they have going on. Yeah, good question. Okay, setting goals is the second really most important part of the process. What do you want to get out of this? How many of you have a process where you do set goals for your sales and marketing initiatives? Really concrete goals that you hold people accountable to. Great. It's what?
One hand.
No, it's great. I mean, it's difficult to do because what do people say? Well, if I could measure my advertising, I would advertise there all the time, right? It can be an amorphous thing, but you can set goals. So ensuring that inquiries don't go unanswered, that could be a very basic goal. We just did an article for the World Trade Center about lead generation, lead nurturing in other countries. And in some cases, that can simply mean making sure you follow up with a thank you email in the native speaker's tongue, in the native language. So a goal can simply be acknowledging every contact. Speed to lead, we've talked about several times. Improving conversion rate of prospect to close leads. That requires you to have some baselines, some benchmarks, know how well you're doing, and then being able to measure your improvements. Reducing the number of leads rejected by the sales team can also be an excellent goal. Honestly, I've never worked with a manufacturer, so I've been working with manufacturing since 1998, and I've worked with all kinds of brands, large and small, and I don't think I've ever had a client that said their sales team loved every lead that came their way. I mean, it's just, right? It's tons of pain, and you need the sales team to be working with you in order to achieve your goals. Increasing upsell with current clients, and investing in the cool leads, turning the cool into warm, warm into hot. And at some point, you're really allowing people to self-segment. Not everybody who's going to come into your system is a good lead. And typically, we use the human element to figure that out, right? We call, we follow up, we send emails, we send direct mailers, and they don't all convert. They're self-segmenting, but you don't know it. This allows people to kind of take themselves out of the funnel at some point and removes the human investment on that part. Oh, I want to make sure I'm in the screen. Profiling, okay. So customer profiling is something that we find a lot of manufacturers don't have time to do, but there's a ton of value in doing it because we're really going to stress the importance of content and information throughout this process. We have to give people magnets, reasons to come in, raise their hand and say, I would like to engage with you or give me more information. How many of you actually use form fills to make first contact with a company? Use a form, use a chat versus picking up a phone. Right, exactly. So we want to set up the system so that more people are willing to raise their hands and initiate the first contact. And profiling is the first step of that. Who are you talking to and why are you talking to them? You've got to know your audience, your titles, your roles, their needs as they relate to your offering. It's really, we talk about the old days of marketing, which was actually mid-90s, which doesn't seem that long ago. When really it was companies were focused on, well, what are our features and benefits? And then they promote the features and benefits and they put an ad in the magazine, you fill out that little card and circle the number on it, like seems like a lifetime ago. But things have changed. We really have to understand the customer's need as they relate to our offering. We're going to talk about a couple examples in a minute. Their pain, what pain do they have? Kent and I worked together on a bearings manufacturer years ago, and an example was their medical device designers. Their pain was really reducing defects and increasing speed, time to market. So those are pain that we have to tap into. What are your target audience's goals and responsibilities? What are they responsible for in their job that your brand matches up with? Behavioral patterns. What's the sales cycle? When do they buy? When do they do the research? If you're marketing to the education market, for example, November and December is when they start thinking about what they might need. January and February is when they do the vendor research. March, April, May is when they're submitting for bids. That's a behavioral pattern. So you have to figure out when you need to plug into that pattern if you know it. And then the demographics. Actually, when you're doing some kinds of marketing, the demographics are primary, household income, age. But in a manufacturing setting, it's really the first 5 that are a little bit more important from profiling perspective. So here's an example of the application of profiling. Our client wanted to sell storage into correctional facilities. It's an incredibly niche marketplace, and it required us to figure out that in some cases we're selling to technology directors at schools. But for this particular audience profile, we're selling to builders and architects, people who are in charge of the design or the retrofit of correctional facilities. Their pain includes building to regulations. Building a jail or a prison, you gotta build to what the federal government tells you. You have to ensure security. Every room needs to be secure. Maximize space. So now we're trying to figure out how to fit the most people into the space that we have and minimize risk. Believe it or not, there can be a lot of risk associated with storage in prisons. It can have all kinds of entry and exit, and so those are things we had to think about. So what we did was we created the content hook, and that is a white paper that helped builders and architects understand how to use storage, how to build around storage, how to incorporate it, how to think about safety, how to think about maximizing space. And we distributed this to them first through a correctional news magazine, so we used their database. We used PPC and SEO to drive people to that content. It's actually, believe it or not, I think it is the #1 producer of leads for this client is the correctional content. And then we also drew attention to it through a bot list, which, you know how bot lists are, right? Sometimes you need them, they're not always ideal. So this is a great example of the profile creating the content for us. So they come in here, this is our landing page. We use a lot of campaign pages that actually sit outside of the website so that you don't worry about your website getting really cluttered up. And we can also, by doing that, we know exactly how people are coming in, so we can tell the client where the conversions are coming from. We get more from pay-per-click, we get more for organic. So we use this as our call to action for that piece of content. And the only way we can get it is to do a form fill, submit your information. And then we're getting into the automation part. So what they get as a result is start to finish support for your correctional storage input. So they come in, they get the white paper, and now we're going to feed them information about all the steps they need to take to move forward. Any questions on that basic process? Yeah.
The content pieces, that was data was #1 lead generator. In your experience, is that also the lead generator for a lot of clients?
Absolutely, it really is. You mean important content?
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you have to give people a reason to want, you have to think about what they're doing, what they're doing in their lives, at their job that they're responsible for, that you can solve, and then help them get that information. We use this model a lot. Another example of profiling is law enforcement. These are just examples to show you how segmented we can get. Again, we use the landing page with pay-per-click, SEO, and email, driving people to our landing page. We've got the download, and then the client has identified their process. So anything that's $5,000 or less, the BDT handles right away. 5,001 and more goes into their traditional sales channel. And then we schedule a number of follow-up emails. We have 5, and then we pause. Because if people haven't interacted with us, we don't want them to opt out. Once they opt out, they're gone. So we can pause, and you can determine what your timing is, how long you want to wait, and then you can restart again. So again, this is just some of the creative to show you. Yeah.
With your follow-up emails, will you, based on if they open the first one, that directs them to a different email, or immediately triggers some other follow-up from the salesperson if you have that information?
That's a great
Or
question.
is it just a series of 5, no matter what they do, they 5?
Both. So if it is a product that the client determines to be of extremely high value, we do put that ranking in there. So if they take steps 1, 2, and 3, for example, it notifies the salesperson. You can do that by text, you can do it by email. We can build in accountability because we can actually also notify the owner. So he can be like, hey, what happened to this lead? Or you can just put them into an email follow-up funnel. Other questions? And the whole point is just to demonstrate how deep with segmentation you can get and the value of it. Other questions? Okay, so when you go back to your office, if you haven't already done audience profiling, these are some things that you can think about. What are the pain points? Think about them, not you as the product or service offerer. What goals do our products or services help our prospects meet? What do we help them do? With national bearings, if you use a standard bearing and you build, a vacuum cleaner, it can be this big. When you use a national bearing, it's this big. Size, design, all of those things are things that we have to think about. What's in it for them if they choose us? What do they get? What do they get from choosing us? I mean, that's human behavior in general, and even in a business setting, what do they get from choosing us? Security, recognition, budget control, throughput, what do they get? What are they held accountable for? And what are their biggest challenges? Okay, content is the key. We've talked about this. The high value content is essential to the success because we have to give people a reason to come in and make contact with us. Matt. Thank you. I'm sorry. I don't want to get redundant, but this is the example. This is the hook that we used for law enforcement. So you can see, again, real segmented, specifying storage and furnishings for the unique needs of police stations. And I think this is probably the second most popular piece that we have. Okay, so content built on the prospect knowledge, the profiles, effectively appeals to the customer's need, wants, and pain points with the right topics, their language, and in the medium that you want them, how they want to engage with you. For example, we found that the education market, they don't want to engage with us through email. So they told us, the market told us how they wanted to engage. It wasn't email, that's for sure. You can meet and exceed customer expectations and attract the right prospects, not just any prospects. Deliver the valuable information that generates interest, brings customers back, delivers the actionable leads, not meaningless clicks. How many of you are frustrated by meaningless clicks? Do you guys get data reports off of your programs and you just see clicks and you don't know what they're for, what they mean? There's nothing more frustrating than that, right?
Yep.
And drives the quality leads that are then nurtured. Okay, user-centric website. This is also a really important part of this. And what we mean about this is not just any website, but it's a website that is built intuitively to present your information to your prospects in a way that's very natural and flows for them. Gary, I'm going to ask you to hop in here with us. Yeah.
I'm going to stay back here if that's okay. So one of the things we do with Datum, when they onboard us as a client, they had multiple brands, 3 different websites. Each website was cannibalizing traffic with every other website, so the search tracking was terrible. And for a year or so, we recommended, we really need to do some brand consolidation. So when we did that, and Matt was a UX guy there, we came up with a plan on this single website now. We organized content by industries and by markets, not only by products. Well, before they were just like a product-focused company, push products out. Now we're pushing out content about their industry. So what are your problems in corrections? What are your problems in law enforcement? What are your problems in government storage, in HIPAA regulated storage for medical records? So the user experience now changes. So when somebody comes to the new site, they can, within seconds, self-sort. This is the thing that I'm interested in, and I'm going to go down this path. And before, it was kind of hit or miss. They didn't know where to go first and what to look at first, and now we're kind of guiding them through there.
Right.
So we gave them, like it says on point 2, a logical, intuitive path to the products or services they need. And we use Google Analytics on our sites as well, of course, like everybody does, but we also have a new tool we use called Hotjar, which actually will record customer interaction. We can actually get a videotape of the mouse movements, so we can actually see in a video clip exactly what everybody's doing when they get to that page. So then we can see, well, if they're coming from here down to this corner, well, let's move that thing in the corner up to the top.
Right,
We'll see what's drawing their attention.
So we did build a website based on our user profiles, but the Hotjar has told us some things that we didn't anticipate, which is that people, A, do not want the vertical market content on the main website, and B, they use that search bar like crazy. I mean, people are coming in, they're skipping the nav, they're going right to the search and looking for the products that they want. It was very interesting. And actually, Hotjar is really not that expensive to install on your own websites, and it's incredibly valuable. I'd highly recommend it. So UX, the user experience, all sized brands can benefit from a website that really is using the core user experience foundation, which is the intuitive design, the use of color. Matt Hollenbach is actually our UX expert, so he helps make sure things like your call to action buttons are all the same color. You're not using more than 3 primary colors on your website. Things like that are all parts of a user-friendly website, and it doesn't have to be a $50,000 site in order to be to use UX principles. Many brands that we see, their websites are driven by.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Does anybody here have a GMC Acadia black?
Okay, so many B2B websites that we see are driven by marketing demands and not customer needs. In other words, what we think we want to put forward, what we think matters, what we think we should say. Like an industrial finishing company putting out their promotions, kind of a disconnect. That's what they want to do, but it's not necessarily the expertise that the people coming onto their site want to find. B2B websites can be incredibly content rich, lots of information, lots of technical information, but very difficult to find where that is. It doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Remember that customer experience directly affects the amount of time spent on a site and the number of return visits. So we want to give people what they need to keep coming back. Mapping the journey. Any questions so far? Now we're going to get into the automation part. We spent a lot of time talking about pulling them in. Very important to get that upfront part of the process right. Any questions?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that the discovery process of knowing who you're talking to and what you say to them before you even start figuring out what your automation is going to be. You have to do that work up front, and that work can be time consuming and sometimes expensive and sometimes slow your process down. But if you don't know who you're talking to and what they want to hear, then you're probably going to have a miss when you get to your automation campaign.
Mm-hmm. Right. So mapping out the journey, identifying the hooks and tactics. What do you want them to respond to? How are you going to get them in? Creating the personalized content flows. We'll have some examples for you here that are specific to the customer personas. Some if-thens, so if they come in and they do this, where do they go? If this is more valuable than that, do we get an email trigger, or do they just go into that flow? What are the next 3 emails? For example, if somebody comes in at the top level of a product or service that you have, you might want to use the next 4 emails to push more specific features and benefits. Or if they come in at the bottom on a product level, you might want to sell them up through the other products in that category. Those are just a couple examples. Gary, this is your brainchild.
So yeah, this is just a sample flow chart of how a campaign would work. So, and I had to split half because it's a big one. I'll have to get on camera.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously with any automated campaign, we're going to have a primary kickoff. What happens first in this case? I'm saying we send an email. That email necessarily isn't tied to our automation campaign generally at that point. It's just a trigger to get them to go to a website and do something. So, but if we're tracking that email, so we're tracking open rates, we're tracking clicks, and depending on the open or click that they do, can put them in the appropriate funnel. So if we have an email that has multiple products in it, we're going to have multiple funnels that we're going to segment them right away from the day one. So for datum, for example, if somebody came in and they clicked on a high density storage system, I'm not going to send an email about law enforcement storage, right? I just want to send them relevant content. So I'm going to put them in a high density storage funnel, which generally will start off with the top level view of what datum does and how many different types of systems they make. And then as they get more email, it'll trickle down. So these subsequent emails, then if I see them, if they click on a certain product, I can send them a specific, maybe they want an electronic high density storage system, then I can send them an email that's on electric high density storage system. So, and we're also doing, so we're going to do a pause, and then our automation system always does a yes, no, right? What happened? Did they click? Did they not click? If yes, and Jennifer didn't start to touch on this, but in our system, we have lead scoring, which goes to how to really qualify as a lead, a good lead. So in our system, if somebody opens an email, they get a 1 point. If they click on an email, they get 2 points. If they go to a website and download content, we're going to give them 3 points. So depending on what their process is, our system is adding scores to them all the time. And we can flag, and we'll agree up front with our client at what point level is it worth a customer to be reached out to. Let's say it's 10 points. So if somebody opens 4 emails, does 2 clicks and downloads a document, and they reach 10 points, our system will email the salesperson in their territory and say, this person took all these actions, they're looking at this product, and they downloaded this many things. So when you call them, you can know exactly what they did. So you're starting your sales call with the information of what actions they've already taken. You know what they're interested in. So now you don't have to start off and say, why did you fill out a form on our website? You know, that's the most awkward call in the world. If you have a generic form, what do you need? You know, well, you're talking to the wrong person.
Right now.
Yeah, it's terrible. And then also connected to this, and so we'll have blog posts or landing pages. This sample doesn't say landing page, but each thing we are tracking. So once somebody enters the system, I'm going to know every action they ever take on the website, on every email. So we are keeping track, and it's keeping a running log of every activity by date. So I can set flags in there too. So if I get to really rich content like the white paper is kind of our holy grail of downloads because it has the most information and it's going to give me the 3 points. So I know when they downloaded it, and I can, and then trigger that salesperson to call and say, hey, this person did that. And if somebody keeps clicking no, like I'm going to email somebody and they don't take any action, eventually I'm going to stop the nurture program automatically because I don't want to keep doing it. Because if you use any other typical mail program like MailChimp or other things like that, if somebody opts out, you can never, ever opt them back in again. It's against the law, right? I don't want them to opt out, so I'm just going to stop after 3 or 4 no responses. And sometimes they opt out after the first email. You know, that's fine because they're self-segmenting and they're telling me they're never going to buy from me. That's fine. But I don't want them to opt out just because they feel like they're harassed and they don't want to buy for another year. So I'll stop the program. If they hit yes a couple times, then, but this is when I'll get to my final lead score amount, then it triggers the salesperson to call. And again, I'm still going to end my program at some point. It doesn't go on forever. I'm going to stop it. I have a predetermined stopping point. But maybe in 6 months, they come back to the website and they look at another product, then I'm going to stick them in another funnel and start the whole thing over again. So that's kind of how this works. And so for law enforcement, again, we're sending emails out. all of these items here on this page will be clickable. So if somebody clicks on weapons storage, I can put them in my weapons storage funnel, but maybe they're clicking on personnel lockers because they need lockers for their officers for their gear. So I'm self-segmenting these high density storage, all these things are putting them into the appropriate funnel. But if they click on more than one thing, I'm going to put in multiple funnels. That's okay, because the more information if I can identify that somebody's interested in 3 things out of these 4, I certainly want to market those 3 things to them until they make a purchase. And this shows you kind of this, so I've done some screen grabs here to show you our automated lead program. So in the program, the first step we do is we create emails. So Datum's all the emails, they're pre-built. So that's one thing when you're doing a truly technically automated campaign. It does put a lot of emphasis on development in the front end. You have to build all these emails, and you have to build all your landing pages, and all your white papers and all your assets are pre-built. So you're front-loading your program. But the beauty of it then is after it's running, it's just self-running, and you don't have to keep touching it again. So in their campaign, we have all these different emails that are stored in our email templates.
Well, I will say with Datum, we have 12 verticals that we're dealing with, and we are rolling out some of the verticals over time rather than asking the client to front load
12 different markets.
massive industries.
Yeah, so we started with corrections and law enforcement,
Yeah.
and now we're rolling into healthcare and some other things. So once the email templates are built, we'll build a campaign, and the campaign is normally that first email that goes out that will trigger some sort of event. And after that's sent out, obviously I can click on a report, I can see how many people opted in, clicked, opted out, went to the website, so forth. And then once they take that action, it's going to trigger in our automation system. You'll see we have a trigger event. So this one here says contact subscribes to law enforcement because they filled out a form on the law enforcement page. So first thing it does is it notifies Matt because we need to keep track of what's happening. And then we can add them to different lists. That's what all these different elements are doing. So it's going to segment them into lists. So for future marketing efforts, we have them tagged. We can add all these little tools so we can tag people, like what product they looked at, what market they came from. We can, if somebody's using Salesforce or some other system, we can push that lead right into their CRM system so they know that this person came to the website and did this action today. So they don't even have to come to us to say that. If we can connect to their CRM, then they're going to get an alert on their end that somebody's taking some action. And then it'll send them their first email. So in this case, somebody filled out the form, it added all these tags and sorted them into the appropriate lists, and then sends them a thank you email. It says, oh, I see you filled out this form, here's your download. And in this case, this is the email they get. And the one thing that's nice about our system too is we can support variable data. So we have one email built here, and you see it has a bunch of buttons. Our email is intelligent enough that it knows if they fill out this form, it's going to load this download button because it loads the appropriate content. It's going to fill in their name. So if they fill out the form and their name, hello John, thank you for your interest in this download, it'll fill in the download name. And all that happens instantly on the fly. We can even change the image if we want, so it'll show a different image. So we have one email built with variable data, and it just sends out the emails to everybody. And then we start to see on the customer side what they're doing. So we can add a lot of filters in here. I can filter by tags. I can filter by lists. So I can also add like last date that there was some activity, and I could sort all these things. So here I would see a running list of everybody that took some action on the email that I sent out. And I can see what they're interested in by tags and lists. And then lastly, when they go to a detail of their customer content, here's where I'm saying I can see everything they do. Enter the automation here. They unsubscribe from this list. They subscribe to that list. They receive an email, so it tells us everything they did. Over here, it'll fill in all their key information. So here it's telling me I can add tags like they're engaged, they submitted this form, they went to the law enforcement page, and then here's a snippet of the email we sent to them, said, hello Kenneth, thank you for your interest. So all that information is stored in that database, and then also their dealer engagement score will be here too. So if somebody's adding points, that number will change. And just to touch on that a little bit too, the other thing we do on our system is really intelligent. I only give people 1 point for opening an email because I don't necessarily know if they really read it. I mean, if they opened an email, they'd have just been like, So when they get that point for opening that email, it sets a timer for 30 days. So if they don't open another email for 30 days, it takes the point back away. Because I don't want to have false lead scoring. So if somebody has an initial engagement and then disappears, eventually their lead score will go back to 0. Because I only want to reach out to people that are actively doing something with my campaign. And then here's a simpler version. So Jennifer included this sketch for a smaller client. You don't have to be big to do this. So in this particular case, this customer was going to do one form, and that was it. And I think 4 emails. And they're a manufacturer of polycarbonate and polypropylene sheets. So it's not going to be advanced. It was going to be a set it and forget it type thing. We're going to put this form on the website, and we're going to have these 4 emails that go out. And it's for them, they're looking for new distributors. They're not selling direct to consumers, they sell to distributors. So their goal is to onboard distributors across the United States. So that, I think there's another slide for that one.
The automation.
Yeah, so that shows you the emails they get. So week 1 is a download, goes to the landing page. 3 is sign up for more information, request a sample kit, and then call them out. Pretty basic. So we can do very simple things. Datums is very complex with multiple markets and multiple industries. And I don't know how many products they have, 100 products in there, where this company makes 3 products.
I just have a question on lead scoring, sort of this scenario here. So just specifically like 1 point for open, 2 points for a click. Is 10 your goal that's the marketing call?
For them, it would be lower because there's so few things. So we'd have to say for them, if they get 3 or 4 points, it's worth reaching out to them.
Pushes in the sales for
Exactly.
Call at least to see where they're at.
And for data, we have to weigh it. So if somebody's looking at a high density system, which is probably a 6-figure installation, versus like I need a pistol locker for my pistol, which is $100. I'm sort of going to weight that high density much higher.
Them further, they need to do more.
Exactly.
To score more points. For you.
Exactly. Does that make sense?
How far were they doing this email campaign?
It varies. So generally we're doing like 2 to 3 weeks. I don't try to do any closer than that because then it becomes a little bit of an annoyance. And depending on the market, the research will bear that out. Maybe people only want to get an email once a month, So it really depends on how quickly if their buying cycle is longer, you can spread that out a little bit longer. If they have a short buying cycle, obviously you want to front load that a little bit more. So, a lot of times when you're doing your discovery work on your customer profiling and customer persona, you can discover that. Like, what's your typical buying cycle? That's going to affect the schedule.
We're constantly putting people into the system too. So as we use things like pay-per-click and other emails, we're generating new form fills that are going in at any time. So there's always somebody kind of entering. There's always somebody new coming into the system. So you've got the spacing of the people who are in the system and then the influx of new prospects.
Yeah. And one of the things I didn't really show in my screen grab of the system is if I go into that automation mapping and I scroll down through all the different steps, it'll tell me how many people are at each step in that process. So like 100 people got the email number 1 and 50 people are at email number 2. So I can constantly always see how many people are in that funnel all the time. So usually it's down here further, like there'd be a little number that pops up. Because I always have you always build in a pause. Like when you send out that first email, you want to pause for at least a couple days to give them time to open it because maybe they're on vacation or whatever. So that number will sit here and I'll know how many people are waiting in the queue to move on to the next step. Any other questions?
They had really quick results with data. What's a typical time frame to start to see meaningful impact?
Much longer than that.
Yes.
We for a new program, we would say somewhere between 12 and 18 months to really start seeing results. It depends on how mature your marketing is. Yeah.
And how much information you already know up front about your customer's persona and your buying preferences. If you're starting at 0 and you have to do all that work, you can take a month or 2 just to get that research done to know. But it's worth it. If you skip the discovery, like I said before, if you skip the discovery phase, you really can make a lot of mistakes on the automation side. Because that discovery phase is telling us how often to send things, what to say to them, when to say it, what information are they looking for. So if I don't know that, I'm guessing. which is how marketing used to be before this digital automation. I was guessing. So we're trying to take the guesswork out.
I have a question.
Yes.
You say that if they're in queue for a couple days because they didn't open it, do you wait a period of time and then resend it again?
I can do that. So one of the options, and I have all these different options in my funnel. Let's say yes, if 5 days go by and nobody takes any action, resend email number 1. And then if they don't open again, usually I'll just stop, because if I send somebody the same email twice and they never open it, I usually am going to pause them right away. So I can put in as many variables. There's no limit, so it can get really complex and branching free of actions. So a lot of times we'll break it up in different automations. So if they get to a certain point in this automation, we move on to another one just so that automation isn't so complex that you can't figure out what's happening with it. Yes.
Do you use any statistical methods to adjust your parameters over time?
Oh, absolutely. We look at the data to see what they're doing. So if we know, if I send an email that has 6 products in it and the product at the bottom gets clicked the most, I move that product to the top. We're always looking at that. On the website, on the email, on the download materials. You always have to, I want to respond to whatever my audience is telling me they want me to do. Yeah.
We're also beginning to use A/B testing. So if we have a couple different methods, if we'd like to see which one is performing better, you can actually set it up so the automation puts 15% of people into one section, and another 15 in another section, and whatever works out better, it sends the remaining percentage of your list to that.
Yeah. It'll automatically do it, so it's really nice. So you don't have to worry about going back and looking at your A/B results. It'll automatically say, well, okay, at 15%, this one pulled 10% higher. I'm going to just automatically move everybody over to that email now and skip the other one from now on. So it's just saves so much time the way we can build all that intelligence into the system now. Yes.
How big would your content development team be to set all this up? I know each project's a little bit different, but what type of support staff do you have to support customers?
Our full team is 9 people at our agency. So we have 2 copywriters and several people in our department and a couple programmers. So Matt, the UX guy. So it doesn't take a big team, especially if you do that research up front and you know the information to craft it. Any other questions? Am I handing it back to you now?
I don't know, let's find out.
Yes.
You covered most of these already.
Good. Okay. Oh, I did. I just said event triggers, pausing features. Yes. Yeah, because we always want to avoid the deadly opt-out.
Right.
Because I know once somebody opts out, I'm never going to be able to get them back again. They're gone. So. I'm going to keep going. Okay. So, and I even covered some of this too. So our system's going to provide data on all customer interactions once they have the process. I know everything to do. Every time they come back to the website, I see what pages they look at. I don't know in my system here how long they spend on each page, but I know every page that they went to. Details on downloads, product and service interactions. And then again, as far as the CRM system, so if somebody doesn't have a CRM system, we can set it up so emails or even sends a text. I can do whatever. To notify a salesperson, you need to make a call to this person. But if you have a CRM system, we can also push it right into Salesforce and flag it. I'm not a big Salesforce guy, but I know that I can trigger, to mark somebody as this person is ready to be reached out to. And then from then forward, if they enter the system into another product line, again, I'm all gonna that once that customer's in my system and they go into another funnel for another product line, it's all that data is going to accumulate under their personal ID, so I can always tell what they're interested in.
Right. So at the end of every month, we actually do attribution reporting for the client. The system allows us to see what pages people came through on, and if they're associated with pay-per-click or organic, we can actually backtrack the name of the person, where they came from, what tactic was used, and then the client can use that to match them up to quote or close. Yeah. So.
And the other aspect of our system that we're not leveraging now is geo-targeting. So the system can be set up so it knows that if somebody from Indiana comes to your website and you have a sales rep in Indiana, that I can automatically connect them with that person. I don't have to run it directly through corporate to sales to go back out to lead. We can plug into whoever. If you have a dealer network in different states, we can connect them as well. So we can make it intelligent. So if there's if there's data that's relevant, like let's say you sell a product that's has to do with flooding, and then there's flooding in a certain area, we can geo-target that area and when there's a lot of rain in that area. There's lots of things we can do.
Okay, that's me. Here's
That's
another, yeah. So this is another one that we heard from our client, and I'm so tired of my dealers thinking, I only sell one type of product, or my clients, I'm sure. Is this something you guys struggle with? People know me for one thing, but I offer a much broader offering. This allows you to help address that as well.
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
Sorry.
First, I'm going to unlock my iPhone. Okay, Matt.
Siri's talking to you.
Upsell and cross-sell of current clients. We highly recommend this. Anytime a client says to us, we're looking to generate revenue, we say, how much are you getting out of your current clients? Are you just bringing them in, giving them what they need, or are you actually nurturing that relationship over time? And how are you putting things in front of them? This is a little bit, this is a pretty complex email that we have here. The client was always saying, well, they just know us for mobile storage, but they don't know the fact that we can do file shelving and we are in Office and corporate. This is dedicated, this is directed at their dealer network so that they can really deepen the relationships. It's a pretty competitive market. They want to show their dealers that they can cover any need that they possibly have. And it allows your program to cross-pollinate. So our current client initiative is something that you guys are working on or thinking about. This can certainly fill that need for you.
What was our statistics we onboarded?
That's the dormant dealer. Let's cross over that. Yeah, reactivating old clients. So the client had a database of 4,000 people that used to buy from them. And he said, now it's 800. What the heck? Like literally, what the heck? So we implemented this system. We reintroduced the brand. Assigned different values to the brand. It used to be very static, one-dimensional. Here we're pushing a product at you. Now we're telling former clients what we can do for them, how we can help increase their sales. Do you want a lead automation program for yourself? We'll offer it to you. Let us bring more business to you. And they actually had a 10% increase in reactivation of dormant clients. 10% success rate within 3 months of launching the program. So that's 10% of 4,000 people who came back on board and raised their hand. Now, they tended to be smaller sales, but the client realized in looking at his data that the bulk of his sales were actually coming from smaller sales. So his growth plan was to get those folks who were 25,000 and under. So it definitely achieved the goal. We can't, that's okay. We can't read that screen. Nope, that one, sorry. What I was intending to show you, which didn't work, was that we can track where they're coming through. They can tell us what they want. This dealer said, I'm not a dealer now, but I want to be. That enters a whole different system internally. And it's all through just a different type of conversation. We used to tell you one thing about ourselves, and now we're telling you something that's more interesting to you. Okay, some obstacles that you guys might face before we get in here. Any questions so far? Okay. What if my website isn't what we consider user-friendly? Does anybody have a concern about that? There are workarounds, certainly. When we have a client that doesn't have a web overhaul on the docket, we use just the landing pages, use them as workarounds. We don't even have to embed them into the site. They can sit separately as campaign pages. We have clients that we have 20 or 30 campaign pages for. So there are workarounds and they're all user-friendly. That's one way to get around that. What if I don't want to or can't invest in high-value content? Does anybody have a concern about that? That's a tough one. We really firmly believe that the high-value content is a part of the success of this. So far more than worrying about your website, we encourage you to think about what you offer that's unique and valuable. You just got to really think about the what's in it for me. What's in it for me? And what if you don't want to officially invest in automated lead nurturing? You can do a much smaller program like we showed here. It doesn't have to be big and complex. And a word about the list. So list management, a good list is everything in marketing. And there's really 3 ways that we help our clients get lists. One is organically, people who have been customers or interacted with us over time. We can put those into the system. There is actually a way to opt in your existing databases. And obviously the people who are raising their hands and interacting with us, they go in, they become part of our list. And we do purchase lists. I don't know if anybody else purchases lists with varying success. It really depends on the industry, but the list is really one of the most critical parts. But
Sometimes you're forced into purchasing a list, for example, datum
corrections.
corrections. The only way we could
Yeah.
get a good list of corrections personnel was to buy it. There was just no source that we could find out there through
Right.
Zoom or any other resource that had corrections people.
Can I ask a question about the high value content? I'm interested in doing that, I just don't have the time to write it. You know, can you help?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's really one of the things that we do best for our clients is figuring out what their audience needs to hear that is relevant to their job, and then crafting that content and putting it out in a way that they'll respond to it.
So it's interactive, like I'll jot down some things and then you write it up and then maybe I approve it, that.
Sometimes our clients don't even do that. We do the research for them. Like we were over at a client that manufactures screws a couple years ago. And I mean, it's just a screw. And they had an argument about whether rolled versus threaded was the better way to make a screw. And it turned out that that was an incredibly valuable piece of information for people in chemical engineering and the chemical industry. And we turned it into a white paper, landing page, an infographic, and even placed articles out. So like they didn't even know they had content, but they had incredibly powerful content.
Well, one thing we always talk about too with SEO is that content is gonna help that as well. So it's gonna do double duty, correct?
Absolutely, right. The content on the site is so rich that I think their rankings are like 52. Their domain authority is is in the 50s, which is very high. You should be shooting between 40 and 60. So yeah, the content helps a lot. And there's different types of content. I mean, you can generate the generic stuff. You know, what are you looking for when you're trying to buy, you know, paint refinishing, or the highly technical stuff. It really, the highly technical content, it really depends on what your users are looking for. Other questions? So we do have, Matt, how are we going to make this available for people? We do have an online assessment that lets you kind of go through some questions. And can you guys see the bit.ly? It's a shortened URL.
We'll do a follow-up email.
Okay,
Yeah, we could send
great.
it.
And then,
Yeah, great.
great. So you can kind of walk through the steps and answer some questions to see if this is something that would really be beneficial to your organization. It's a good way to get you thinking.
We also have some downloads. There's an FAQs document on
Right.
lead generation. At the second link there, there's going to be 2 downloads there. It gives you a little more information about the process.
Are you gonna track my clicks and mouse movement?
Yes.
We're all going to your website to see how fast it is, so we get an email.
You know, it's wrong, but I just love that stuff, like looking at the data and the hot points, and it's very cool.
Just a question on like, so somebody downloads a white paper, and we kind of go on the assumption of like, okay, you've engaged with us, you've given us your email to download this, like that, then would enroll you into a series of emails. Do you do an opt-in though? Do you also have a checkbox on those forms that like they're saying like I'm interested? If they fill it out, great, they get the download, but are they automatically being enrolled?
We're automatically opting them in.
We're automatically
Yeah,
enrolling them,
yeah.
but
That's how I do it.
yeah,
Yes.
but you couldn't do that. Let's say if you were doing international marketing and the EU was so
Right.
stringent that you cannot do that.
Right.
Actually, you have to do a double opt-in there. You have to let them checkbox and then send them an email that says, "Are you sure you want me to send
Right,
it?"
so how do you ever do that?
Right, and in California, I think you have to be doing over 50,000 or 500,000 in business in order to
Okay.
use their
So,
emails.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way I've always assumed, like, hey, you're applying to get some emails now.
Now, with downloading, are you verifying their email address? Because we throw this back and forth. I've gone on places, on websites where it's like, put in your email address and I'll create a fake one because I just want to read what's there. I don't want anything from them. Are you verifying their email address?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a bogus email address, the next follow-up email is going to bounce them out. And certainly we know that some people are garbage, leads, they're not genuine, and so that's definitely going to happen. But the good news is that never hits the sales team anymore.
Yeah.
So previously, you get a form fill, you send it to the sales team, and they're like, what the heck, you know?
Yeah.
This is Granny in Indiana, I can't do anything with that, but it doesn't hit the sales team anymore.
Do you incorporate any social media platforms with your program?
For this brand, we really don't, because we don't have any data that tells us that their audience is really using social media. But for other brands that might be, certainly we would, yeah.
Okay, like posting any content, you wouldn't like post the content, or would that be up to?
We do
Okay.
post, but we don't have any expectations of lead gen for that.
It's more of a brand awareness
Right.
approach for the
Yeah.
social media.
Other questions? I think we're good. Leanne, I think we're,
Oh.
yeah.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us. We'll have to go get Dave to do the tour. Sorry, web streamers, you don't get to join us for this awesome tour. You can join us in person in the next one. We'll take a quick break and we will do the tour. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Also have we publish a marketing tips magazine. I'm going to give everybody a copy as well. Got some more